Okay, so hello and welcome everybody. It's time for another little non-duality chat, and today we're here with Josh. Hi, Josh.
Hi,
Nice to see you. How are you today?
wonderful. It's another beautiful present experience today.
Is that how you feel every day?
Uh, Tough to say. I mean, what I will say is there's a sense of spontaneity on a daily basis. It's hard to track that, but it's new all the time.
That sounds so lovely. The freshness of that.
You know what's interesting is whatever it appears to be now is usually how it appears to be always. So I guess it's always like this. That's kind of how it shows up.
So how long has it been like that for you?
Well, let's see. In relative time, I think it's been about 10 years now.
Hmm. So what
I
happened 10 years
don't
ago?
know how accurate that is, to be honest with you. I'm not sure, but that's what people say. Something around 8 to 10 years. I think it's 10 years. I don't know. Um, yeah, go ahead.
No, I mean the number doesn't matter, but what was it that happened back then?
So I had been invited to a 1 day meditation retreat, and when I got invited, I didn't really want to go, especially based on the location where it was, because it wasn't in a part of town you would usually want to go. But I could feel like a pull in my stomach. I don't know how to describe that, but it's like so it felt like something was attached to my belly button and gently kind of tugging, but like a consistent pressure. And it was very noticeable. So it kind of led me to go anyway. And when I show up, I knock on the door, a guy who's got like a faux hawk and he doesn't look like a spiritual guru at all, answers the door. He's got like a really, I remember it being like a Backstreet Boys t-shirt. He
Oh,
says
really?
he's never had a Backstreet Boys t-shirt, but anyway, it was Angelo. And so we sit down. I don't know him, and we start talking, and it was just really nice to have a authentic um, human conversation. And he kind of gave me a rundown of how it's going to go. Other people are going to show up. We're going to go down into the Zendo in his basement, and the first meditation will be guided, and the rest will be self-guided. And so after everyone showed up, we go downstairs, and as I sit into, well, actually, he had us sit in whatever position we felt the most comfortable in. And so I kind of had a little bit of a lean on a pillar next to me. And it was within maybe 2 or 3 minutes, I started to feel a sense of, it felt like a sneeze, but a full body sneeze. It was like this kind of accelerating pressure, but it was really kind of a nice pressure. And then I felt kind of like a pop right here, and it was like bursting out of my forehead. And I had no hands, I had no body. It was just color. And it seemed like it went on for maybe another couple minutes before I heard the bell. And then when I kind of came back into the body, I realized that that was an hour had gone by, and it was almost instant. And so that kind of kicked a lot of things off that basically haven't stopped since.
So you didn't do any spiritual stuff before that? That was the first thing?
No, I mean, I had dabbled a little bit, but really had come to a conclusion that spirituality was a way to convince people to be nice to each other, that it was a moralistic approach to getting people to cooperate. And I always saw meditation because I didn't have any meditation practice. I used to call it time out for adults.
Okay. And just within a couple of minutes you had that experience. That kind of extraordinary, isn't it?
It was rich. It was a surprise for sure. That was the probably the people started asking me questions that I had in my orbit because they noticed things had changed. Something was different, and they would like look into my eyes and be like, "What's going on?" And I would tell them a little bit of the story, and they wanted to know how did you do it? Like that I had something planned and I made it happen. And the one piece that stood out the most was it was a zero expectation. I mean, zero expectation. I was at a particular point in my life where it was actually pretty depressed and I was feeling very apathetic and I was pretty miserable at that point. So I had zero expectations for anything at that. And at that meditation retreat, I think that really started to play itself out because whatever showed up was a complete surprise. And so it made me at some point look deep at expectations and whatever those pieces are. And one of the first insights I had after that experience was I don't care, I don't need to care. And when people first heard that, they thought that had something to do with about other people, like I don't care about other people. But what it was is I don't care about what's going to happen. I just didn't care anymore. And there was something really miraculous about that because once I didn't care about what was going to happen, I had no sense of future. It was all just very, very, very present. And that also simultaneously erased any sense of a past. There was no more rumination on any past stories or things that had happened anymore. And it's mysterious. I don't really understand what it is. I don't think anyone can, but it's profound and obvious when it shows up.
So did all of that happen at the same time after that experience, or was it like gradual
There
afterwards?
were
Or
there was a lot of gradual unfolding pieces. So after that, I had a whole bunch of interesting things happen. They at first they seemed minor, but they started to kind of increase in the way they were appearing, I guess we could say. So that first weekend after I left, I went down to go camping with a friend, and what I realized on the way home after that weekend was I did not hit a single red light all the way home. And in Denver, that's kind of unheard of. It was pure green lights the whole way home. And I noticed that I didn't have to stop one time, and that kind of really stood out to me. And then I get out of my car and I'm heading into my apartment, and there was a man across the street who he was familiar. He'd walk around and he would have conversations with people I couldn't see. I think he probably has schizophrenia. But he asked me, he says, "Hey, man, do you want to buy a picture?" And I always had really good interactions with this particular guy. So I said, "Sure, how much?" He said, $3. Or it was like $2 or something like that. And so I pulled out some cash and I gave it to him, and he handed me this marker drawn picture, which was like an exact replica of the experience I had when I had shot out of the head. It was like a message, like a messenger showing me things. And all of these synchronicities just kept showing up and piling up. And I had about a 6 month period of just bliss to the point where I would go to this local grocery store called Trader Joe's. And every day I'd walk in right when it opened and I'd walk around and hugging people all day long. And sometimes people would say no, thank you. And it was the first time in my entire life where someone said no, thank you to something like that, that I didn't feel a deep sense of shame or rejection. And that's all I really wanted to do. I can't really explain what it was. I don't know what the thoughts, if there were any thoughts going on. But I do remember at some point the people that worked at Trader Joe's said, they go, "Are you here to bother our customers again today, Josh?" And I was like, "Oh, am I bothering your customers, you know?" And it got to the point where even the people who worked there were waiting in a line to give me a hug every day. Like it was just a thing that happened. And that really lasted for around 6 months before feelings of kind of like depression and tension and sadness and resistance and anger started seeping back in. And I was extremely disappointed when I started noticing those feelings because I had thought I had like reached some kind of heavenly plateau. And I remember I had never prayed, that was just never a thing. But I fell to my knees in the kitchen and I cried and I cried and I begged God not to take it all from me because it was just, I could tell something was happening. But that eventually led into another period that was roughly around the same length of time that was just deep, dark, shadowy, um, leftovers from conditioning and childhood and memories and things like that. And that seemed to be a crucial part. The one thing I can say about that is that it was very clearly something I could not avoid. And so I didn't have any way to distract. So I had to dig in, I had to feel. And I did a lot of
did
that.
something trigger that, or it just like naturally came up? Well,
It's a mystery. No idea what that was. There was no life event that triggered it. In fact, relatively speaking, life was getting easier in a lot of ways. But I just had this really profound sense of sorrow and sadness. And at first, there was a character, there was Josh in the middle of it. It was about Josh's life and things that had happened to Josh when he was a kid. And then it started getting really, really profound, like this just deep, deep grieving. And it started to feel like it was shouldering all of the suffering of humankind or all life since the dawn of time. It was just this really profound sense of grieving. And um, I knew there was no other option. It just was so clear that I had to touch it. And I had a few thoughts that had lingered throughout. There was one around this is going to kill me. It kept showing up. Oh my God, this is going to kill me because I would cry so hard that I couldn't breathe. I couldn't like I felt like I was going to lose consciousness every time. And thought would say, this is going to kill you. You got to stop. This is going to kill you. And I really believed it was going to kill me. And so it was the first time in my life in a very long time that actually didn't want to die. And then the second thought that was kind of haunting was, when is this going to end? I was really looking for some kind of end point. I was having all these really interesting visions too. I didn't know anything about Hindu mythology or deities or anything, but I was seeing images of Kali. I was seeing fire. I was seeing a lot of violence and destruction, just these flashes of images all day long. And it was kind of disturbing because I had this sense of like something bad is going to happen. And then, but I also realized there was nothing I could do. And so I started to kind of lean in more directly to that. And it played itself out in a really beautiful way. Once I didn't care if it was going to kill me, and I really truly didn't care if I was going to die anymore. And I didn't care if it was ever going to end. It changed.
Did you work with someone during that period, or did you do it by yourself, so to speak?
I had no one-on-one connection in like doing sessions or anything like that, but I did have a text message connection with Angelo. And
Mm.
so what I would do every once in a while, I would just text him, while going about my life and ask questions or something. But they were very brief, nothing very in depth. And I even remember reaching out to like see if I could become buddies with him. Let's hang out, let's do something. And he said no. And at the time that like really struck me, but I started to realize what that was all about because I was looking for anything to cling to. Like it was like I was in some kind of sinking ship and I was
Safety
like
net. Yeah.
struggling to survive and he was basically telling me in some way that you can breathe the water, that you think you're sinking into. And
Mm.
so there was one time I texted him and I said, I think I'm losing my mind. And he said, oh, no, you're fine. Just keep going. And for some reason, that's all I needed to just keep going. But I found the journey to be at least that part of it. It was really important for me to do it solo. I understood something. It was just intuitive. Working with people, I find that that's not necessarily always the case. Yet for me, I had to do it alone because I had some kind of attachment to abandonment. And what I was looking to do, even subconsciously, was attach outwardly so that I didn't have to touch something that was showing up in direct experience. And
Mm.
so it became a very solo adventure. I mean, of course, I had interactions with people, but I never talked about it or got into any of those things. It was very private and solo. And I was lucky enough that I was able to function in the daytime when it was light outside. But when the sun would set, I could feel it was like something coming. It's like something's coming, something's coming. And then it would hit right when it would be dark enough and I would just go right into it. It went like this every single day. Cry, cry,
Oh.
cry, 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 can't breathe. And then at some point, I think it was 192 days into it. There was a change.
So what was the change?
So I had this dream. I was already starting to get a sense, like I was already not caring. I was exhausted in the process. Something needed to get exhausted, I could tell. Because whatever was fighting was utilizing some kind of attention or energy to fight. And I didn't really know what was fighting. It was just this sense of fighting. And it got so exhausted that I really didn't care if it was going to kill me at all. I just was like, okay. It was like a complete surrender. And I didn't care if it was ever going to end. I was just, that's fine. I'll live this way forever. And it sounds apathetic, but there was still something in it that felt like a little spark. And I had a dream that was very cinematic. I had like this, it looked like the screen opened like this, like a on a movie screen. And I'm looking out into this vast volcanic landscape, like a somewhere in Hawaii or something, where the lava has just freshly hardened and there was still steam coming out of the cracks, and it was black. and it was foggy everywhere, and I could see human body parts everywhere. I mean, there were arms, heads, torsos. It was just like something had eviscerated the entire landscape, extremely violent. And I could feel something in my hand, and I pick up my hand and I look over, and it's my head. I'm dead, like this, gray skin, everything
Oh,
dead. And then I woke up that morning and I could feel it started right here behind the navel, and it was like an energy of like it felt kind of like that. And I somehow knew something was different, something changed. And that night, as moved right back into that same kind of grieving process, I had dropped so deeply into the experience that it was just like this gone, 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 gone. Like nothing, 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 nothing. And I can't really tell you how long that lasted or if it's changed at all. I don't really know. But what I can say is I've had bouts of not being able to recall years of my what happened in my life, even though everyone I had encountered was aware of what that was like and told me, "Hey, remember that time we took a plane out and we flew an airplane?" And I was like, "Wow, no recollection of these things at all." And so I asked people like what it was like to be around me, and everybody's like, "Man, you never seemed happier." And it was pretty normal. We'd go to baseball games or whatever else, like just hang out. But there's no recollection of that period. And then I was on Facebook one day, and I saw one of the interviews that Angelo does, and he put it out, and I simply commented, "Hey, that looks fun," or something like that. And my phone started to vibrate like I was getting text message after text message, and it was Angelo, and he's like, "Where have you been?" And I was like, "What?" He's like, "Where have you been?" And my experience at that time was like maybe it had been a couple weeks, 4 weeks since we had talked, like not very long. But he said, "No, it's been 2.5 years," and I had no clue. So I go back through a text message, and there was a 2.5, 30-month gap, something like that, in between the time we had talked. I have no idea why or what that was. But it kind of felt like time travel, truly. Like I suddenly kind of woke up in a new world or something. And anyway, he goes, "Let's have an interview. Come do an interview on my channel." And so I said, okay. So I did an interview with him. And at the end, after he stopped recording, he asked me if I wanted to work one-on-one with people. And I found that kind of funny because actually laughed. And I was like, I don't know, man. It just didn't make sense. Like, what do you mean work with people? Because in this experience, it has been very solo oriented. But he's like, people could really use, some pointings. And I was like, I didn't know what pointing was, nothing, none of that stuff. So I sat in meditation that night and I could feel something kind of stirring down here in the stomach. It took a color. It was like an amber orange ball of energy that moved up like this and it hit the throat. Once it was right about here, my mouth, it like forced my mouth open and shined out like a flashlight. This was like the experience of the meditation. And there was one particular thought that showed up and it said, "Oh, it's just sharing." And I said, "Okay." So I contacted them. I said, "Yeah, I'll work with people." And been doing that for, I don't know, 4 years or something now. And it's been quite a journey because
is your experience that it's as intense for all people as what you went through, or?
yeah, there's been a lot of really interesting aspects to understand or to see any discernible pieces of a path for someone. And what I've realized is under the surface, fundamentally, it's exactly the same for everyone. Yet the intricacies that seem to show up in our relative existence are also absolutely different. It shows up very paradoxical. And what I had easily realized right away is it's easy to meet people where they are. It was just so easy to do that. It was easy to hear what somebody said and basically become that experience with them, become them in the middle of that, and point from that place versus having some kind of idea of what this is and what people should do or shouldn't do. And it that started to take a very intuitive life of its own that's also been very blurry in terms of memory. I it's I have a feeling it's evolved a little bit and changed a little bit as this has kind of gone on. But fundamentally, it's really all the same. Meet someone where they are and allow them to speak through you is what it feels like. And so That's what it's been mostly. Very rarely are there hard-nosed pointings that push and challenge. It's more along the lines of, "Are you listening? This is what you're saying," and it works pretty well. And there's been a lot of insights that have come up along the way. And what I've found is a lot of those insights are mutually discovered in the middle of a session or something along those lines. Sometimes they do come up solo. I had a really interesting one the other night. The most pure insights don't have language, so they don't really show up in words. There's just like this clarity, 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 and it's like something is being witnessed or experienced somehow, but it's not, it's hard to describe. But the other night, this one clearly wanted to be shared because it was a very similar feeling, something wanting to come out of the mouth. So I allowed myself to wake up and I put it down in English. And then something intuitively told me, put it into Sanskrit. And so I had it translated into Sanskrit. And when I heard the sounds of the words and the syllables, it was so much closer to the initial insight. And
Mhm.
that's how it's been. It's been quite a wild ride, I suppose.
So how has it been with like the grief and triggers and things? Did they stop coming up after that period or?
Yeah, what I would say is the feeling of being a human being just got richer. That's the only way I could put it. And not necessarily an isolated person, but like the human experience became very pronounced. But the narrative, the sense of a self being involved in all that has essentially completely vanished. So it's like experiencing everything in very much the same way, but there's no one at the center of that experience. It's so when somebody's going through grief, sometimes I'll do these shadow circles. I have one coming up in Vancouver, and to sit with somebody's sense of sadness or something, and to be with that, I can easily like feel it and experience it with them without having a sense of having anyone involved. It's hard to describe, but it's like you become the environment somehow. You are everything that you're around, and that's all there is. So it's not like there was a period of time it got kind of neutral, I guess I could say. It seems like that stands out as a memory. Um, but it just started getting very, very, very human. And what I've really discovered is the people I work with tend to have a very strong heart orientation. And the pointings have started to become much more heart oriented and human connecting oriented and things along those lines. So it's almost like you become what's being asked of you in some way. And it's kind of beautiful.
Yeah, that is beautiful. And you started working with people one on one after you came out of that kind of sh shadow period. Is that what you said?
Yes, once I had gotten an invitation, I said, sure, I'll do it.
Oh, right. So it came from a suggestion from Angelo that you started.
Yes. Yeah, there was no sense of any of that before. I mean, it wasn't even anything I would ever speak about or talk about at all. It just didn't seem relevant. It's still like that, I would say, by and large. The only time these things are really spoken about is in this type of venue.
And do you experience like subject object at all or no?
I would say it's something like this. It feels like a cosmic game of peekaboo, and I can't say that's consistent, so I'll just speak of it right now. So right now, it's like there's a sense of somethingness, but what it is, or if there's a subject experiencing that somethingness, is so blurry and impossible to pin down. I can't be sure, but almost I don't know how to describe it, like close to a sense of something, but not an object. Like I can't tell you what that is. It's just something. That's as close as I could get.
It's so
What here,
funny hearing people trying to describe these kind of things, you know?
it's like here's something I can say. Can definitely play a game of subject object. So it's not like being absolutely disoriented. But
Hmm.
there's it's so natural and kind of effortless in interaction with all that is that there isn't a sense of me doing something or grabbing something. It's like it's almost like destiny. It's always been this way. Is the best way to put it. Hard to say. Time buffering, time distortions, things like that, very common too. And this kind of ebbs and flows in a way. So it's interesting. I'll meet with someone and they might be a little bit more identified in some ways intellectually. It's like I move into that space with them and I can kind of see the world directly through their eyes. It's almost like we're mutually seeing the world in a certain way. But it's also like having another foot in something else, like being kind of half in, half out of something, and like winking at a character on stage playing a part. So that whatever that is that has the other foot out of that experience is like beckoning, like, hey, come this way, come this way. So it's not like getting lost in any way or anything like that. And I will say, in a relative way, there's been a pretty profound realization that literal relative reality, beyond perception, of course, is literal absolute reality. They are exactly the same. And the only thing that can give us a true wedge there or a sense of separation is a mind that's doing that and it's imposing that sense of separation. So the closer we experience anything, the more obvious it becomes. So the game of Cosmic Peekaboo is like something seems to pop up and it goes, "Hey, are you me?" And then it's like, "Yes, I am you." And it's, bloop, bloop.
But it never happens that you feel like overwhelmed when you feel other people's stuff so much. I mean, other people's, but like take
That
on so much.
that has never happened. And I've heard other pointers, so I'm not really sure what the experience. My sense is there's so many varying degrees of this, and it doesn't mean anything. But it is absolutely effortless to take on everything someone else is putting out. It truly. And there is oftentimes a sharing of that experience, even if it shows up as like some kind of emotional expression. Sometimes it'll look like crying together, and it's that kind of environment. And that is completely natural and okay. It feels right. But there's no lingering sense either. It's interesting. Once you take a breath and you stand up and you walk into the other room, there is nothing before.
It kind of just flows. Nothing sticks, really.
Nothing sticks, truly.
Mm.
Um, it's just such a sense of effortlessness. And there's these insights that come up, and then people go, "Oh, that's a really good insight," like as if there's a knowing in the insight. But the truth is, there is no insight outside of what's showing up now. It's kind of a game. I put these koan cards together years ago, and one of them says, "Insights have no meaning,"
Mm.
because they don't.
Mhm. No, if you try to cling to them, I mean, they're already gone. Like, yeah.
Gone, here and
Mhm.
gone.
Mhm.
And something else I've found that's definitely true is it doesn't so far haven't found an end to integration. And integration looks a whole variety of ways. Sometimes it'll be a sensation that's doing something and it's immediately gathering attention. Sometimes it will be like a subtle sense of a perception of something that seems kind of consistent. And so then you can tell that attention is leaning that direction. And it just keeps showing up in the same way that whatever seems consistent eventually becomes nothing if we look closely enough. Any pattern is empty. Everything that seems to be here is fundamentally empty. You look close enough at anything that appears to be a solid object, and all you find is electrons. And then you look closer, and then you're maybe nothing. And it somehow seems like we have a very direct connection with that we're somehow playing a game of this macro physics and quantum physics at the same time, somehow playing a game of relative and absolute at the same time. And we find that they are fundamentally the same, but appearances are appearances. And that's seems to be part of the game here, is that an appearance will arise. We don't deny the appearance. The appearance is asking us to look closer. So we look. And this is where the insight of curiosity came up because it's all about the looking. The question, what is Mu, is a really good one because Mu doesn't have an answer, and that's the point. And just because it doesn't have an answer, the mind will say, okay, then there's nothing to look for here. But that's not it. That's the conclusion that the mind wants us to live in. It's the looking itself that matters. It's just the looking. That's it, truly. And if we encounter something that we cannot continue to look at or we don't want to look at, that's where we start to engage with courage because we find a condition there. There's some kind of conditioning,
Mm.
something saying no. And so it's just looking, 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 and then, oh, look again, because now something seems to stand out. Oh, look closer. And then it just goes like this. So, the person of Josh, I probably died. I don't know if it was physical, but whatever the person of Josh probably did die, and that's what that whole dark shadow piece was. But the avatar, like the apparatus, seems to continue in some way. And I find that kind of poetic and beautiful because that is absolutely shared. I've not found an exception to that anywhere. And not that I need to live in that conclusion, I still look, but there's a sense of like it's like a warm blanket realizing that we're all foundationally the same and that there really is no one else. This is somehow an usness, all of this. That's easy to be with. And then we start looking at wildlife, we start looking at animals, and we see it instantly there also. It's this foundational innocence being expressed in this interesting, delightful way that we call life. So it's pretty amazing. When
Do you
people
still get spots where you don't want to look still now, or not so much?
actually, those are the most exciting things when they show up. And that's what I mean by lifelong integration. It's
Mm.
almost like we we remain diligent in some kind of way or vigilant in some kind of way that if anything stands out, it's like an instantaneous, oh yes, like there's something.
Invitation. Yeah.
It kind of has an exciting tone, but I can also see why people have a sense of wanting to move away from it because that excitement is being distorted somehow into a sense of anxiety or fear. And there's thoughts that are associated with that. So what I tend to remind people, because this seems pretty consistent, at least in human experience, is that if you run into something that you don't like, that's your message. Look there,
Mm. There's something there, yeah.
guaranteed.
Mm.
Especially if it makes you feel a certain way. If you feel anxious or if you feel scared, that you definitely want to look there.
Mhm.
Because why is it fighting so hard? What is it pushing against? It's hiding something. You can tell. So you start looking a little closer, and what you find is that even the thoughts themselves are somehow a distortion of what wants to hide. And it's all essentially the same in these varying degrees of human experience. So even thoughts are clarity if you know how to look at a thought, not the content. There's an energetic to it that's basically pointing directly to what it wants to hide.
Mhm.
It needs to keep track of what it's attempting to hide. Therefore, it's telling on itself.
Mhm. Mhm.
So then we go, oh, it's not about what the thoughts are saying, it's what they're doing. And so we look at that and we go, oh, no, I know where to go. I know where to go. And it just becomes very, very effortless.
You make it sound so fun.
I, it's truly it's the only way it shows up. It's,
Mhm.
it's really like a game. I
Mhm.
mean, especially when the sense of death, because there was like this very existential, like, this is going to kill me. I don't want to die. And it was like this something just resisting this specter of death. Like there was no object there, but it was like this idea of dying. And then there was also a realization that wait, already gone. Like it's a simultaneity. We're here and gone at the same time. Like there isn't death in the way that the mind thinks, that it doesn't exist that way. This is a perpetual space of impermanent transition, whatever you want to call it. It's never the same. And whatever a lifespan looks like, it's part of it. It's just another metamorphosis that just continues and continues and continues. There's no beginning or end. So if you have a life that has no consequence anymore, if you're not spending all of your energy surviving, now what do you do? Well, seems like play is the thing that shows up for most of us. And I
Mm.
see people playing a variety of games.
It makes sense why they call it liberation. Like when you
Yeah,
describe it like that, because you're not bound by anything anymore.
it's, I mean, here's what an insight said one time, and I'll just relay it and see if it does anything. Everything is inherently innocent. It is what it is. Like it can't be anything other than what it is. Hand is hand. That's innocence. And then the way that innocence tends to show up in an energetic experience for most human beings is a sense of curiosity. And then the way curiosity tends to establish itself in physical reality is play. And when we look closely at those and we realize that those three things aren't apart and aren't separate, that play, curiosity, and innocence are all inherently the same thing, it becomes so obvious. But there is something I will say to expression. This tends to be missed often. And the mind will get a lot of ideas what about expression is, but expression expresses on its own. It's like creativity arising on its own. It's not for anyone and there's no one doing it. But what I've noticed is most human beings are somehow repressing some sense of expression, whether that be a physical motion, whether that be energetically, like they want to squeeze down a sensation or verbal or sound or something. And it's that repression that really holds together a sense of a self, some form of expression that is being modified and
Oh, that
changed.
makes, yeah.
So this is why shadow work is so potent and powerful because people take off the mask, which is repressive. It hides something.
Mm,
And when that mask is off, it's just unfettered expression. And there's no one doing it, but it's doing
mm,
it on its own.
mm.
That looks like play too. I mean, you know, when you see a puppy and it's so damn cute and you're just like instantly in love with this little fluffy ball of innocence. That's what we all are at our foundation. We cannot help it. We are what we are. But the mind starts to say, well, there's darkness there and there's something wrong with you and all those pieces. And we tend to buy into that. That's an identity structure. So if there's no longer a sense of having anything wrong with what you are as you are, then I guess the problems are gone. You're no longer hiding from sensations and emotions. It just expresses as it expresses. So the truth is, whatever comes up, there's no stopping it. And all I can say is, in the midst of a deep cry, there's nothing else that could be possibly wanted. It is ecstasy. Kind of
I
redefine
love
suffering.
that.
The mind gets an
Yeah,
idea of
mm,
what suffering
exactly.
is. Suffering is just arguing with reality. That's all it is.
Mm.
And you can't. It's a tsunami. And then, there's like this little person standing there going, I'm going to stop it. And here comes this, you know, 40-meter wave. And they're like, I'm going to stop it. And well, we all know how that goes.
Yeah, you can try for a little while, but yeah,
It's gonna
at some
get you.
point, yeah, it's gonna get you. Exactly.
And, consciousness seems to be like this. It's like we have something resting on our shoulder all the time that doesn't get caught up in the human drama of things, but has a foundational sense, like an intuitive sense of this is the way. And it's observing all of this, kind of like laughing and chuckling, because it's really truly inconsequential. All of it. Everything's already perfectly fine. And not to take away from relative suffering and things that are happening, wars and all these pieces, but it still fundamentally comes down to an identity structure. And if that identity structure is its primary purpose of existence is survival, when there's actually no tangible something to survive, then that's going to start to distort itself into a lot of suffering. And that's basically what we see is a super identity that has kind of dominated the landscape in our human world. And all you have to do is wake up and it starts to spread like a wildfire. And then we have like a dawning, an obvious realization that this is much simpler than the mind makes it. Very, very, very simple, literal, and obvious. And you will see that a very primary piece of human beings is cooperation. That's an essence of a human love, working together, being together, doing things together, coexistence. It's all comes down to that. And so anytime you encounter a lack of cooperation, you'll find an identity there. That's what shows up in the external world. Now, look here. Is there a lack of cooperation in your own system? A feeling you don't like and you're not cooperating, you're pushing it away. It's the same thing. It's just coming to wholeness. And what you see is you don't really need a mind to cooperate. All we want to do is roll around and share snacks and, you know, play like little children. And it's very, very possible. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's what dawned on me lately, that how possible it actually is. Like I see so many people, you know. I never thought that it was so accessible to everybody, but I really see it now.
Pretty
It's
remarkable.
yeah, it's amazing times we live in.
It really is.
Yeah.
It really is. And who knows? I mean, something I have found is I encounter people who are awake all the time. In fact, to get really fundamental, everyone I encounter is awake, but they might have a holographic something going on. There's an overlay. But I encounter people that have nothing, no sense of any path or anything that are very awake. I encountered an old cowboy in Wyoming one time, and we just sat down and talked, and it was obvious he was just obviously wide awake. I mean, the words that he used and the way he described things might be slightly different, but everything in him was wide awake. He understood the interconnectivity of all things. He understood how nature lives within him. He would say that. He's like, he's like, I find that I become the grizzly bear, I become the wolf. And I said, it's beautiful. Seems to be. So it's definitely happening all over the place all the time.
Okay, I think that might be a good end point. It's happening everywhere all the time. I love that. So I'll put all your details below if someone wants to find you, and you do like regular meetings as well, and
Mhm.
one-on-one, and what else? That's what you do for like full time, working with this?
It is. So
Mm.
I basically do like 5 or 6 of those a day. And then every once in a while, I'll have something like an in-person retreat that I'll do or satsang today. I have a satsang later, which is just a Q&A, session. And then sometime in August, I'm going to travel to Canada and do a shadow work circle with about 15 other people. And so these are the invitations. And so it's easy to say yes.
Amazing. Thank you so much for talking to me, Josh. It was a
I'm
pleasure to
glad we
meet you.
I'm glad we finally connected.
Yeah, me too. So nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Much love and take care.
Love.
Bye bye.
Bye.